governor's attempt to roll back efforts in our public schools to keep our children and staff and faculty safe. First, let me just say, I am a parent of 2 children in Richmond Public Schools who every morning feels the anxiety of sending my children into school and hoping they come home safe. And that anxiety has been heightened with the COVID pandemic. I know being in school is best for them and their learning and their socialization. But I also know that our schools need to take efforts consistent with CDC guidelines to mitigate their risk of getting COVID. Not only is it the right thing to do, it's required by law. And so we are here today as parents, teachers, and legislators who are concerned with the governor's efforts by executive order to undo legislation that the General Assembly, under its authority for overall education policies as laid out in our Constitution, and his effort to undermine our schools, who on their own have also instituted mask mandates, as is their right under the Constitution to regulate the day-to-day activities of public education. The science is clear. Masks and social distancing limit the risk of children and adults catching COVID. We now have a new, more contagious variant, another surge, that is putting even more stress on our school system. Threats from the governor to reduce funding, which he cannot do on a legal basis he does not have, does not help. So we are here to say we support our school division doing what they need to do to keep our children and adults in those school buildings safe. We will not let the governor overstep his authority and bully our school system into doing anything else. It is now my pleasure to turn the podium over to Schuyler.
Hey everybody, my name is Schuyler Valkenburg. I represent Henrico County in the House of Delegates, and I'm a school teacher in Henrico County as well. And I'm going to start and end in the same place, and I think I'm a broken record on this, but the goal should be to have as many kids as possible in school 5 days a week, learning at a high level with high standards, right? And that should be the goal. That should be the overwhelming goal of all school systems across the Commonwealth. It should be the goal of the state government. And we should be doing everything to that end. How can we keep kids in school 5 days a week? And how can we make sure they're learning at a high level? That should be our goal. And that's what I find very disappointing, as I mentioned yesterday on the floor, and both of the first 2 executive orders, and we're talking about the second one here. Some context, when we passed that bill last year, and on the House side, when that bill came over, we changed a lot of it. We added a lot of language, put public health guardrails on school reopening. And the reason we did that was we're still in the middle of a pandemic. We didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know how circumstances were going to change. And we wanted to make sure that we had the flexibility to make sure schools could stay open and do so safely. Because at the end of the day, a school is a building. It's the people in that school that make it work. And that's students, that's teachers, and that's staff. And so, for instance, one of those guardrails was around making sure that teachers had access to the vaccine. Because if teachers aren't in school, right, we have less learning going on, right? We have less, the standards drop, the learning goes down a notch. But the big part, of course, was the mitigation strategies following the CDC. We need people vaccinated, and we need to follow those mitigation strategies so that we can keep kids there. And we've seen how important that language is. First in August, when the Delta variant hit, right, if not for that bill, we might not have had schools open 5 days a week. And it was really important to have that bill to make sure schools stayed open. Now, as we have Omicron hitting, our schools are already strained. We have severe staff shortages and teacher shortages because they're out sick. We have large segments of the student body out absent because they're sick, they tested positive. And that's a problem, right? If a class of 30, which is too many kids in a class, and that's a separate problem, and in a class of 30, if 5 kids are out for a week, we're losing a lot of class time where we can help kids succeed. And so we should be doing everything we can. We should be throwing the kitchen sink at keeping kids in school, which is what that bill sets out to do and why we have those mitigation strategies in place. And so it's a disappointment, to say the least, to see the governor issue Executive Order 2, which I think puts that at risk. It's going to lead to more kids testing positive. It's going to lead to more teachers testing positive. And while the Omicron variant is less dangerous than some of the ones in the past, it still means they're out of the building. And if the goal is for kids to be in a school, and the goal is for kids to learn at a high level, they have to be there, teachers have to be there, staff has to be there. And our overriding goal as localities and as state government should be to make sure kids are able to learn at a high level. So I would hope that he rescinds this order. I would hope that we can do everything we can to keep folks safe. And I'm disappointed that, right out of the gate, we're focused on culture wars rather than the goals of educating children. Thank you. Oh, and next up is Delegate Schuyler.
Thank you, Delegate Schuyler, and I think your description of what Governor Youngkin has done in the first hours of his administration is declare a cultural war. And so for all those listening, this might be another event, another press conference, but just be clear. Virginia does not teach critical race theory, and so to outlaw something, prohibit something that is not going on is beyond my comprehension. I've never been as recognized in the drawer. Having said that, it seems painfully clear that Governor Youngkin is now more interested in exposing kids to the virus rather than the true history that we all know built this country, built this Commonwealth. Governor Youngkin, unfortunately, appears to be using our children, my children. I, like Senator McClellan, Delegate Hockenberg, I'm a public school parent in the city of Richmond. And the anxiety that Senator McClellan talked about has only been exacerbated by this pandemic, not knowing whether or not the teacher's going to be there, whether or not they're going to have to go back to virtual, the fact that, my kid's backpack, which now weighs probably 15 pounds with a Chromebook in it, just in case they've got to shut down and go back to virtual. All this is crazy. And the fact that we're taking masks, probably the single biggest ability to reduce our risk is a mask, coupled with the vaccine, coupled with social distancing. And when I think about the reasoning that he has offered, parental rights, not taking politics out of the classroom, as a parent, let me be clear. I believe kids, teachers, staff need to be masked continually. And I am so proud of Richmond Public School Superintendent J.C. Cameron for being the first superintendent to say, we don't care. We are going to continue to wear masks in RPS. If for no other reason, then Governor Youngkin is on shaky ground at best, telling the local school board what they can and can't do. Their powers and responsibilities are defined by laws and by constitution. So, to be quite frank, while we are reminded at every step of the way by our friends on the other side of the aisle about states' rights, and that's a whole other separate discussion, and the overreach of government, the rule of law, law and order, it always seems to take a backseat when it introduces them in their political ideology, their extremism. And so I hope what you'll hear from us today is that we continue to trust science. We continue to believe, as the Pediatric Association has said, that masks in schools are working and they need to remain. And let us not forget our healthcare workers. Our hospitals. They are stretched beyond the capacity as they have been for the past 18, 20 months. If we care, if we're compassionate, let's think about this. And we have to do everything that we can to get to the other side of this pandemic. And removing masks, rejecting the continuing to politicize a deadly virus is irresponsible and immoral. And it is time that we all become adults and do what is in the best interest of children. There is no other important asset that Virginia has than our children. And so if he really wants to improve education and raise expectations, we got to start with raising the expectations of the adults that have to say over what goes on in our schools. And so I'll close by just saying it is my hope that smarter, cooler to prevail, and that Governor Youngkin rethinks and maybe gets a little education himself, much like he did on one of his other executive orders dealing with climate change, and allows school divisions to do what they've been doing, and that's put the students and their most important constituents first. And now we'll hear from Senator Hopkins.
Good morning, and thank you, Delegate Bourne, and thank you to everyone who's here. I'm Senator Ghazala Hashmi, representing City of Richmond, Chesterfield, and Powhatan. And I think this morning we've heard very loud and clear. We've heard from an individual, a delegate, who is also a public school teacher. We've heard from parents about the vital need to continue practicing those safety measures that have kept our community safe, that have kept our children safe, and importantly, that have allowed our children to return to school, to return to learning. And these are measures that we need to continue to follow. It's been very, very clear to us that uninterrupted education, in-person instruction is absolutely vital for all of our children, and these are the critical steps that we have to take. As we've heard already, it's really unfortunate that our new governor has taken this as a battle when so many of us are in agreement that we have to continue to practice the safety measures that we have been following. And I'm not sure exactly which parents he's been talking to, because I've been receiving emails and phone calls and have had personal conversations with parents who are my constituents who are actually quite worried now about their children's health and safety. And more importantly also, they're worried about their younger children, the children at home who cannot yet receive the vaccine. And if we're going to think of ourselves as a community, we have to be looking out for each and every one of us. And I think this is a completely misguided effort that is going to erase the progress that we've made. It will jeopardize our ability to keep our children in school, to keep our teachers and staff safe, and that has to be the #1 priority for us. You know, just yesterday, the chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics released a statement reiterating how universal masking is a good safety measure for us in the midst of this pandemic. They've encouraged Virginia to continue to follow those safety guidelines. We were so fortunate that as the pandemic came to us, that we had a governor who was a pediatrician, a physician, who has the insight and knowledge to be able to tackle this crisis head on. We were fortunate that he appointed another pediatrician, Dr. Danny Avula, to lead the vaccine effort. We have been a model in so many ways for other states to follow. I've had friends and families who live in other states talking to me and saying, I wish my governor was doing the same as your governor, Governor Northam, did. And we need to continue to be that leader. So rather than threatening to withhold funding from our local school divisions, an authority that he really does not have, I would hope that the governor is listening to all of our parents and listening importantly to our experts, our physicians, our pediatricians, our families and educators who are asking that we keep the mask mandate and that we continue to follow the safety protocols that have allowed us to return to school safely. And I think we're going to take a few questions then, if I'm correct.
Yeah, before we get questions, there's one voice that hasn't been heard in this conversation yet, and that's the children. So yesterday at Defund Middle School, there was a conversation about that. And the children understood and said they wore their masks not only to keep themselves safe, but to keep others safe. Because when asked what they were the most worried about, the students at Defund Middle School said making someone else safe. They understand what's at stake. Sometimes better than parents, sometimes better than teachers, because they have to live with the consequences of if they bring the virus home or bring the virus into the school. The public health experts, pediatricians, and the kids know it's time I bring the virus.
Okay, we're gonna do some Q&A, so if you have any questions, please, back there.
Yeah, you referenced the state law a number of times, obviously since Governor Northam initially made this statement previously when he was in power about the state law requiring schools to follow the CDC. That interpretation has been disputed. So at this point, especially given the recent action, are you going to be revisiting that law to try to clarify the language?
I don't think we need to clarify the language. The language is very clear. And Schuyler can talk about the specific intent behind it, but what the language says is that the schools will be in person to the extent practicable, but they are required to follow CDC guidelines. The CDC guidelines still today recommend that everyone in the school building wear a mask. The law that the governor points to is a law that is a general rule of construction about parental rights, but when the bill was passed, that it codified a state court case dealing with parental custody rights. So they're structured. General rules of statutory construction cannot be used to override the plain language of a statute. If you have any further questions about the statute itself, Schuyler will be happy to answer.
Do you have any further comments on the governor's authority or lack thereof to withhold state funding? Can you explain why you don't think you have that authority?
Couple of reasons. The Constitution makes clear that overall education policy is made by the Board of Education under the authority given by the General Assembly. But the day-to-day supervision of schools is left to local school boards. The General Assembly appropriates funds, not the governor. It is the General Assembly that decides what gets appropriated. And unless we give the governor the authority to withhold funding, we can't do it.
I would also just state, outside of the legality of whether or not we can take money away, if our professed goal is that we want to have academic excellence in schools and that we want to be having a world-class education for all children, why we would deprive them of the funding needed to achieve that goal just blows my mind. It is baffling why, in the name of it's a culture war fight, you would deprive students of access to a quality education. I can't wrap my brain around that. If what we care about is kids, why would we implement a policy, which isn't legal, but why would we implement a policy which hurts them, not anybody else?
If the governor does seek to withhold funding, how does this play out over the long term? Does it become a budget battle because you don't extend that authority to him as the state legislature? Is it a legal question? Does the Attorney General weigh in? Attorney General is a co-patron in that law on the outside? What happens?
I think worst case scenario, if the governor seeks to withhold funding, there will be a lawsuit. It's worst case scenario. For all the reasons Schuyler pointed out, I hope we don't go that far. I would also remind everyone that the last time the state tried to step in and override local school boards on decisions that were made was massive resistance. which is why the Constitution is clear. It's the local schools that make decisions about whether they keep it in and how it's not, funded or the other.
But I think just sort of as an aside, we heard the governor talk about using or exploring all options, right? And I can assure you that the people standing up here and the people that really, really genuinely care about kids and public education in Virginia, we're going to explore, we would not take any option off the table to make sure that we are continuing to protect and invest in our kids in Virginia. Removing the mask mandate, allowing this confusion is so detrimental to our children's education and their health.
We take one more.
What sense do y'all give mask as an example that there's a partisan rift growing on coronavirus policy in the legislature, and also how do you remedy that?
Well, I think you take a snapshot of the House session, and you need no clearer example of the partisan divide on coronavirus policy, masking, etc. There are 48 people that have been elected that wear masks. There are 52 that don't. There was a discussion yesterday, but I'll let you all figure out why that was. But I think it's clear. We trust science. You can expand our reasoning for trusting science for lots of other reasons. There are still people in this legislature that don't believe climate change is real.
Great, thank you guys so much. We're gonna end it right there.